If I asked you right now what your lead to tour conversion rate is, could you tell me? If I asked you how many active members are sitting in your pipeline this week who could come into your space, could you open it and show me? Because if you can't, then maybe your problem isn't occupancy, maybe it's visibility of your sales process. Welcome to Flex That Worx. You're joined by myself, Anne-Marie and Graham, and today we're going to talk about the uncomfortable truth that many spaces aren't running a sales engine. They're running maybe a brand based on community, but perhaps it's not close enough to being a business just yet. Hi Graham, how are you?
Hi Anne-Marie.
How are things?
Good no.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, first off, community is not a sales strategy.
No, I think it's been used, probably overused in the marketing functions in a lot of co-working operations, but it feeds the sales engine, and it's a part of the toolkit, but it's not effectively the sales engine. Yeah, it's what you just outlined there is an entirely different tool set, process base, all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the community aspect also doesn't always separate out who's in the space experiencing your community versus who's coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously a business needs this fresh blood coming in. So it's about having a structure about how that's happening, Things that you could potentially be looking out for. Organic referrals are fantastic, but they're somewhat unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
We can rely on word of mouth. I've heard that said by a number of operators. We just rely on word of mouth.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. But by rights, that should be the additional piece on top, I would say, rather than you've no control over that as such. You don't. So
you can't measure it.
Yeah. I think some questions maybe you could ask yourself about your own sales, because I think also oftentimes we feel we do have a great process,
Mm-hmm.
But you could ask yourself, like, do you respond to every inquiry quickly? Like, what's your time to respond to things? Is your follow-up, if somebody's come in on a tour or sent in an inquiry, is the follow-up kind of ad hoc or is it structured? Do you review the pipeline weekly?
Mm-hmm.
I'd say some operators don't even want to think that they have a pipeline because they feel, I'm not into sales, I'm into community, we're not about making money, but at the end of the day, every space is a business, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're community focused, if you're a social enterprise, if you're a charity, you might convince yourself that the greater impact you're having on the wider community is what it's all about. But spaces focused on social impact, no matter what way you boil it down, you're still going to have to report to a board. You're still going to have to turn up with the numbers. There will always be someone on that board who is numerically minded, and they'll want to at least get it to as close to break even, if possible. And the idea of hiding behind community and almost treating sales as a dirty word, you're not doing you or your business or even your community a service. And because if you're not getting to a stage where where you can break even through either sales or corporate sponsorship or any of that, then you have to question the long-term sustainability of the space and, unfortunately, the community that you spend so much time building.
Yeah, I mean, everybody reports to somebody, which is just the reality of things. So I'd say, like, community is definitely, we're not undermining it. Like, it builds retention. It's fantastic for retention, but sales is what's going to build your growth,
Yeah.
So maybe we could chat through, like, where we would see operators maybe leaking a bit of revenue, where we think they could tighten things up. And there's kind of 3 areas that I was thinking around for that. So one is slower missed follow-up, right? The other is that there's no pipeline structure, that there's no kind of a process in place for that. And the third is there's no awareness of conversion.
Yeah.
So what does conversion look like? What are the numbers going like? How are things running? So if we were to look at the follow-up piece, what do you see as being the most important thing an operator should be looking out for there?
So, like, if somebody has taken the time to book a tour, come down, see the space, you're so far down the probability, down the pipeline with them at that stage, and the probability, every minute they spend with you, the probability is growing and growing. And with any good tour, you're consistently listening to what problems they want to solve for themselves and how this space could effectively solve that. And at the end of any tour, look, they might sign up straight away, or there might be a list of follow-ups, as you said, to-dos. You know, they might have queries and questions that you might need to come back to them on. And so, kind of taking a step back there, if you're requiring on book a tour and they can do that through a Calendly link or anything like that, that's fantastic. That's all automated. If you're working on inquiry boxes and just general, queries that they fill in, you have to be getting back to them as quickly as possible, because that sets the tone for your service level. So if you're someone looking for a space and I send an inquiry, I'm in the market for a desk. I'm in the market to get out of the house and work somewhere. I'm in the market to not have to go to the office. I'm looking to spend my money in the locality. I'm a high intent buyer. And if you take 3 days to come back to me, I'm probably after going up the road somewhere else. And if you do come back to me and I'm after seeing another space, suddenly there is a subconscious there going, well, if it takes 3 days for them to get back to me, how long is it going to take them to sort out an issue with my billing?
It's actually where the hospitality piece comes in, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because, I suppose people would be saying, I'm not a huge sales engine. We're not a huge space. I only have 10 desks or 15 desks. Brand, community and the hospitality vibe are much more important.
Yeah.
This is actually where it kicks in. It's like process enables you to give that a high standard of service,
I think for anybody who's and look, we see it time and time again, like especially with the locally based independent operators, they're generally building it out of a passion for the locality that they're in. And as I said earlier, like, sales can sometimes be viewed as a dirty word. And when we think of sales, we think of people in pinstripe suits trying to force something on you that you may not really need. The best way and the most effective way to approach it, if you're not comfortable with the idea of being a salesperson, is ask yourself the genuine question: can I provide this person value? Can I, give this person a space and a reason to get up and come in and make the most of the services we're providing? If they're not a fit for your space, put your hands up and say, look, maybe you're not a fit for this space. Maybe you should go, and be suggestive that they go somewhere else. I read a book a while back. It was about Zappos, the online shoe company. Great book. I can't remember the name of the book.
I know the one you mean.
You know the one?
Yeah.
And literally,
you can link it in the show notes.
Yeah, and if you rang them up looking for a pair of runners, you got in touch with them about looking for a pair of runners, they'd actually say, well, we don't have those in stock, but the guys in Foot Locker do.
Yeah.
So that built that, rapport.
Solving a problem.
Exactly.
Solving a problem.
Yeah.
And it's a great place to put your mind as well, because then it puts the focus. It's so common for us when we have something to offer, and I hear it all the time. I have all the spaces available, but nobody's coming in. Our offices are full, but nobody's taking the desks. The desks are full, nobody's taking the offices. Can you put yourself in the shoes of the person who would take an office versus a desk? What problem are they having? Why are they not finding you for it? And process is involved in all of that.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get very far without having some element of your marketing to get your leads in. And then this is where it kicks in, that you've done all the hard work. And even if it is a word of mouth, kind of an ad hoc piece, are you saying then that actually you want somebody who's in your space, a word of mouth connection gets in touch, they've put their name to it, and you've dropped the ball on the lead? So there's actually no scenario in which you don't want to have a fairly tight process on managing.
The other side of that, Anne-Marie, before we move on, was we did a bit of a poll with a few hundred operators, and mostly independents, and the vast majority came back and said that what keeps them up at night essentially is the sales and marketing function, because it's so easy to get tied up in the day-to-days, and and these things, sales and marketing, there's always another LinkedIn post you could be doing. There's always so people tend to hide behind the comfort of the day-to-day. Say, I just got too busy to do it. And look, it's human nature that we'll make excuses to avoid it. But if you're not filling your pipe now, it'll come out. It'll come out in the wash in a few months' time.
Which brings us nicely on to the next piece, which is not having a pipeline structure. And the beauty of what you're describing there, once you've got a structure on your pipeline, this can be the simplest thing in the world. You don't need to have a 14-step sales process as if you're IBM. It's not necessary. You can be a small space But I'll always say to small operators, yeah, you're small, but that's actually more of a reason to have a process, because these are just things you don't need to decide every day.
Yeah.
You don't need to get an inquiry in. And if it's yourself and you've one other maybe volunteer in the space, you don't need to be saying, how do we manage this again? What do we do? Just have something locked in, that supports you to manage it. And what you're describing there about like dropping a lead or not getting back to somebody fast enough, just having something in place that manages that for you straight off the bat makes life so much simpler. If somebody was just putting stages in place, just to get into the detail, because obviously we love to keep these episodes really practical for people. If somebody didn't actually have like a process or different sales stages in place at the moment, and maybe they do, but they've never put language on it, right? What would be the most basic 3 that you'd recommend?
Ooh, look, it's going to vary. Everybody's going to have different language around this, but essentially it's like inquiry received, tour booked, tour carried out, follow-ups done, and then win, lose or draw. Where did you land at the end of it?
Totally. I would keep it literally new inquiry in conversation.
Yeah.
And that's your tour, your over and back, your negotiation, your pricing, whatever. It just sits in conversation and then close.
There you go.
If you are, the main reason you want those 3 is because you just talked about all the time you can pour into marketing. You want to see which ones are closing and where they came from. So if you're tracking anything at all, just track. I have a friend who's a craftsperson, phenomenal at the work they do, can literally never tell me where a client found out about them from. It drives me nuts.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, brand new order, a couple of grand for like, it's jewellery, right? A couple of grand for like a ring or something. I'm like, how did they find you? No idea. I'm like, how would you not ask? But it's just so important to ask. And the person says to me, oh, I don't want to be nosy. I'm like, they're coming to you for your service. Ask the question, how did you hear about us? Because that informs where you spend your time the next time you're going out looking for work,
And you'll spot the patterns, and if that's where people are finding you, you just ramp up the activity in that section,
So many people will say, I don't know, they just rocked in the door, or I just got a form through. Did they find you on Google? Did somebody give you the name and they Googled? Were they driving through and they picked the location, like pick the city, whatever, It's so important to check it out. Awareness of conversion rates. What's your take on this? People are giving like multiple tours in the week and not really keeping an eye on how many actually ever come back.
Look, the old saying is what's measured is managed, right? So you need to set up a task, goes off once a month, sit down, count the amount of tours, count the number of new clients. Simple as, do the maths.
So that means having some way of managing that bit of a pipeline, yeah.
And that could be easily done. Like, I mean, how many tours are booked and how many new invoices have I sent? And that's where you're pulling the data from,
So that's the simplest way to do it. Yeah. Even if you're like in a small space. So there's this concept then, right, about occupancy. And a lot of people would say, oh, I'm at like 80% or over, If we were talking about this concept of being full, but then spaces, we know from the statistics that, is it 43% spaces are profitable?
57 in Europe.
57.
Yeah, which means 43 aren't.
Yeah, nailed it. I knew I was on the money somewhere. Just which bit of the money? So in terms of, do you think like all the spaces that are saying they're full are profitable? Does occupancy equal profitability?
No, not necessarily. Occupancy is one of those things that is, I don't want to say impossible, but nearly impossible to measure across a market. For your space and how that behaves is all going to reflect on occupancy. And I think every space could potentially have a different, how would you say, definition of occupancy. So a lot of what's in co-working and flex work has been a direct translation or parallel comparison to what's happening in hotels and hospitality. You go on LinkedIn, you can either be in real estate or you can be in hospitality. That's it. You can't be in co-working, right? We've like, there's an industry-wide debate going on about that at the moment. So it's not unusual, or it's not unjust for the industry to kind of lean on something like occupancy, which works in hotels. It's number of bedrooms, number of nights, do the maths, what was our occupancy? When it comes to flexible workspaces, they're far more flexible than hotels. A hotel is a finite number of rooms, finite number of nights, and look, I'm sure there's complexities in that, but when you have hot desks that you might do on a half day, full day, that all of a sudden, it's what's the definition of where's our occupancy at that with that. And then we throw dedicated desks into the mix, and then we toy around with, as the business develops and moves, we're shifting the proportion of dedicated to day passes. So, like, what way do you measure it and when do you measure it then? And then you throw offices in the mix on top of that. And then what do? You throw then meeting rooms in on top of that. We have private and public bookings in it. So you need, you'll need a fairly complex model, and you'd want to make out your own definitions of what occupancy truly means to your business, in order to make any sense of it. So I think myself, maybe you need to break it out into it. Maybe it can't simply be one number. When you see people say, "Oh, we're at 92% occupancy," when you break that down, is that an average of, well, hot desks, your occupancy could literally be, we had 5 desks available for our booked every day. You're at 80% occupancy. And then you add that to the average of your dedicated desks. And I'm only spitballing here, but I just think it's a very dangerous number to get tied up on it as well, because if you tie all these numbers together and your occupancy is at 90%, or you even have a waiting list, but you're still not making money, what's the point of measuring occupancy?
So that's the main piece for me. Yeah. It's like, what's actually, occupancy is all lovely and that's great. It's like the restaurant that's, got queues out the door, but they're not breaking even. It's very same. So,
but again, we're getting into hospitality.
Yeah.
In a restaurant, they're talking about how many times they can turn a table around, which is the mind. So what you're actually doing there is you're mixing almost restaurant tables with hotel rooms and trying to define an occupancy. Like the restaurant in a hotel is entirely different to, the hotel. Their
we're
occupancy.
Also talking about it like it matters.
Yeah. Exactly.
As an industry, we kind of bandy the number about and things, but really the conversation is the business viable? Are you going to be, how long are you going to be around for? So I suppose that piece around thinking about how the different spaces that you have available are being used. What are you charging for them? Are you running on legacy discounts, especially for smaller operators? I speak to so many people who say, look, people came in day dot, I gave them this rate, now they're used to it, I'm afraid to change it. I've spoken recently to so many smaller operators who are so afraid to upset their members. And it's that piece of like, are you a parent or a friend? You know what I mean? Like, you are the business owner at the end of the day, and it's nice to get along with people in there. However, people actually thrive in boundaries. So if you need to adjust pricing and adjust discounts and stuff, if it's going to be at the cost of the business, I think it's important to have a clean balance sheet more so than getting along with everyone and keeping everyone happy.
That's probably one of those unspoken disadvantages of community, is that when you do have a really strong connection,
set the apple cart.
And like you turn around and you're talking with somebody who may have to change their business model, then coming and upsetting the client who's used to their ways, then it's a balance. And look, nobody's going to know their clients better than the operator themselves.
I have my own take on it though, which is that if it's genuine community, people really want to see the place succeed.
Yeah.
And if they're doing well themselves, they're going to say, come here. Like, I would hate to think that I was working in a place where we weren't being charged what was needed to keep the place running well, So actually, you might be doing your members a disservice. They want to be.
I think when I think back to the first clients in the door, you're so grateful to them coming and buying into your vision. And
can't do whatever. No,
I understand.
You can't be grateful to everyone.
I understand, but what can happen, and I've seen it happen, is the old guard come in as day one. They're on as you said, the legacy pricing, and things are going great, and you don't up the prices because you don't want to upset the apple cart, and they were there at the start, kind of rewarding them. I would be of the mind that you have to kind of nudge. If your costs are going up, you have to nudge theirs up accordingly. You can't be.
We're paying more for groceries. We're paying.
It all sounds logical, but if you leave it 3, 4, 5 years, and they're on us, and then all of a sudden you come in and you try to bring it up to where it should be at the market rate, it's going to hurt everyone. So you need to kind of you need to kind of,
So would you be putting like a 12-month review on things? Would you, or
yeah.
you just always nudging a little bit?
Do you know, like,
What works better, do you
I
think?
think 12 months with anything, you know, I mean, you know, yeah, I wouldn't be.
Most dedicated desk contracts and things are 12 months.
12 months seems to be, yeah.
Office maybe a bit longer.
I can see,
Shorter too.
yeah, I can see 3-month committal, 3-month minimum on the dedicated desk seems to be what people are tied into because of the flexible manner in it.
Yeah.
And in the office, I am seeing a bit more. But again, but that makes sense, right? Because you're moving bodies in there, you want to get a committal, and then there is also sometimes there can be a kind of spec suite element to it as well that needs to be covered off in the cost. So.
And look, I think as well, you have to take a mindset. When an operator puts themselves into the mindset of being a business owner, they can then start thinking about, okay, look, the old garage perhaps are really important to community. There's a few things, a few reasons, maybe or variables, and they're taking the decision to leave their pricing as is. You can still do other things in other parts of the business. So are you actually getting the max out of all the different offers? Are you properly advertising the event space that you have? Are you properly making the meeting rooms available to non-members and using it as a reason to bring people into the space? Are bundles something available to you? Can you put together some clever bundles that are well priced and offer them to the newer members coming in? And there's loads, just because and there's none of this I suppose, worry about, but what if the new members talk to the old members and people, I know there's an element to that, but at the same time, again, you're running a business and you don't have to justify yourself to anybody. You know what I mean? So long as things feel fair, and it's a way to offset things, there are different options, but I don't think you have to be completely hamstrung into decisions you took a couple of years ago, and stay in that place. Yeah. I have chatted with people who actually, when they're changing out their systems, like choosing a new tech partner, changing a software system, it's a great opportunity to bring things up to speed, isn't it? And say, look, guys, time for a change. This is how things are going to work now as part of it. Rather than choosing your current dedicated desk for 3-month increments or whatever, go for a bundle or, whatever the case might be. And it can be a way you can keep it transparent. But it's just a way of shaking things up in general, and people feel like their experience has been elevated as well. So it's not just that you're coming for more money for the same thing, and so that can help as well, I think, to sweeten those conversations a little bit. Yeah. In terms then of finally to have a think about like what a real sales engine would look like, because we started out at the start of this chat talking about the fact that it's a universal concept that everyone thinks, sales is just the dodgy car salesman. Yeah. And it's something that's really been knocked on its head these days, because so many people, and we've talked about it in other episodes, are now working for themselves. They're selling online, doing affiliate marketing. Like there's loads of people turning their hand to the world of sales who probably weren't previously. And sales done well is a whole other concept, because actually literally everyone is selling all day long. So when you think of sales and you have a negative feeling about it, you're just thinking about bad salespeople. Yeah. So just don't be bad at it, And for operators, I don't think there's any fear. If you've already got good community, actually you're selling to those people all day long, and guess what? They're buying and they want to buy. So I'll happily hand over my money to things I wanna buy. So like, there's nothing wrong with buying and selling.
Can I? The two questions you should ask yourself: can I provide value for them, and can I solve a problem for them? And if you can answer those questions honestly, with a big fat yes, then drive it on. You're doing something.
Drive on and don't feel bad about it, and be confident in the value that you're adding and the way that you're doing it uniquely. So in terms of getting a bit of a process behind those things, then what would it really look like? I have some ideas on it. Keen to hear what you think.
I think you need to be reactive, first of all. Inquiries, whatever. If there's any, interest expressed in an inquiry form or a book tour, you need to be on it straight away. You need to have your systems in place that will inform you straight away, so that you don't have to remember not to forget to check something. And then on top of that, I think you need to have almost a Kanban process of just working them through it, and getting it all the way to, as I said, a win or lose. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, brilliant. My thoughts are like exactly that, a response system. Doesn't matter if you're one person space or multi, even more important, obviously, if you've multiple people on the team, touch points, have a system there that supports responding to people immediately. The few stages we talked about in the pipeline, starting out with those 2 or 3 basic stages, I would start with 3 personally, and naturally you'll put in some more as your process kind of extends itself. Wouldn't put in too many. Don't get too complex. It's not necessary. Have your review like you described, and in that I would be keeping a very clear eye on conversion. So what did we do to get that person in, and how many of them came through? And bear in mind that people might come back after 6 months or something as well, just because it's not immediate. They may come back around, so keep visibility on that, you know. Pricing review, I think, needs to be kind of quarterly these days, doesn't it? Even if you don't implement an actual change, I think just keeping an eye on things and then having a plan about a pricing change. Nobody likes that feeling of, oh my God, it's gone so far out of control, like you described. What do we do now, you know?
Just on top of that then, though, before we move on, I think ownership would be something that I'd be keen on as well. You know, you may not be the only person, like we're talking, you know, probably small team setup, but for larger teams and stuff like that, you need to understand who, basically what's the rule here as a team is whoever responds to the initial query owns the lead all the way to the end. You know, and you also need to figure out contingency. If you take the lead and you go on holidays for 2 weeks, that's no good to the wider team. So you have to be sure that there's open communication amongst the team. That, and look, you hear it in, you know, buckets of business talks and books. Everybody in your business is selling, so you need everybody to be at least to be in a position to pick up the baton and take the next step. So yeah, how all those processes work across your team is something to consider then as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So and visibility on it, yeah, that everybody just knows. It's like answering the door here. Loads of us actually know how to answer the door in this co-working space, even though we're working in it, you know. But because it's important to us actually that people have a good experience when they're coming in the door as well, isn't it? And yeah, I think the last piece that I had noted was around upsell points. So that's where the bundles will come in for me, or perhaps other ways that you can add value. But you know, if there are some hits, we'll say, that you have to take in your revenue that contribute to community and brand, that you feel, look, I just have to leave that where it is, then where else can you kind of upsell a little bit to balance that out? Because at the end of the day, you're a business and it's okay to be a business.
But like upsell or downsell even, Anne-Marie, because you could be in a position where somebody comes in thinking they want a dedicated desk, all right? And as a salesperson, you're thinking, right, recurring revenue, you know, bang, 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 all the way for 12 months. But again, come back to the point I made. If you think that that's not providing the value, even though it is solving a lot of their problem, and something like a bundle, which is a package of flexible day passes and meeting room time, if you think that would suit them better, I would be of the opinion sell them that, because they'll be around longer and they'll get more value. But if you put them into a dedicated desk position where you think they're not going to get as much value, they get more value out of a bundle than a dedicated desk, they're going to churn quicker with a dedicated desk. So upsell and downsell, depending on what you think their needs are, would be what I would do anyway.
Oh yeah, definitely always sell in line with what they need. Yeah, 100%. Okay, brilliant. So what we've established today, I think, is that you can have great branding, great events, great energy, but if you don't know your numbers, you probably are a bit exposed. So community is going to keep your members, but your sales are going to fill your desks, and your systems is what is going to protect your margin. So the operators who are winning over the next couple of years aren't just building out beautiful spaces and communities right now, they're also building predictable revenue engines, no matter what size of the space. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for tuning in to Flex That Worx. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss our next episode. Connect with us on LinkedIn, watch the full episode on YouTube, and you can explore free tools and resources over at baseworks.co. This is Flex That Worx, powered by Baseworks, here to help you scale your workspace, making it simpler and less stressful.